What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to share my map tier list for Black Ops 6. Just wanted to rank how I feel about each of these maps in the game's current state. We're about halfway through Season 4, and I just thought this would be an interesting topic. I know I have a few hot takes here. Keep in mind, this list is going to be purely subjective. We're not trying to look too heavily at all of the objective metrics of what makes a good map. It's more so just what I think about these maps and my personal experiences on these maps. And I think it's important to note, I primarily play Domination, and that will absolutely have an impact on how I feel about these maps, but I do play some other modes as well, and I may be pointing them out somewhat throughout the video. In either case, without further ado, let's dive right into this, and we're going to start off with Babylon. And typically, I don't like maps this small. I think it's fine to have some maps like this in rotation, like this size. And as far as really small maps go, I actually really like Babylon. I think it plays quite well. I think considering the size, there's a bunch of very interesting routes and ways to flank and approach situations. And while the spawns do get a little crazy and hectic, that's expected out of a map this small. As a result, I actually rank Babylon fairly highly. I would put it as an A tier for me. Next, when it comes to Barrage, I generally like this map. I do quite like it. I think it plays really well when there's a lot of really good back and forth between teams, and when a lot of the fighting is actually taking place somewhere around mid-map. However, unfortunately, that's rarely how things end up playing out in my experience, and instead, it just seems like a really spawn trap heavy map where there are a lot of locations that have the advantage looking over the enemy's spawn zone or spawn area, and it makes it way too easy to trap people into those spawns, which can get boring on both ends of that. Like just shooting fish in a barrel, it gets pretty boring, it's not all that fun, and then when you are that fish in that barrel, it can be really frustrating trying to break out of that spawn trap, especially when you're able to do it, but your teammates aren't able to do it. So with all of that in mind, as much as I like Barrage and I would love to put it as an A tier, if the spawns were better, I think it would be an A tier map, but with the way it is structured near the spawn zones, it drops it down to a B tier for me. Now after that, we have Bounty, and Bounty is just one of those maps where it's fine, it's an okay map, I don't dislike the map, but it's also just nothing special for me. And as a result, it's just a solid B tier map where it's kind of forgettable, but I don't hate playing on it. I'm totally fine when this pops up in rotation. And the thing about that is, that's going to be a common theme we're seeing with a lot of these maps. Just so I can get that out of the way at the beginning here, I feel pretty much the same way about Dealership. I don't hate the map, I don't mind playing on it. If it pops up, cool, I'm ready to play it. But I'm rarely voting for Dealership unless it comes up against one of these C or D tier maps that we'll be sharing as we go through the list. It's basically just an okay map with nothing special going on in my eyes. Then we've got Derelict, and there are certain elements of Derelict that I really like, especially the more parkour elements, like jumping up onto the trains, for instance, to get an interesting route, or like a little shortcut to get from point A to point B. I like the fact that that all exists, and it does play quite well in that way. However, the overall map structure, I just find it leaves a lot to be desired. Not only do you run into a lot of situations where one side of the map has just such a massive advantage on a particular lane compared to the other side of the map, to where it's almost a death sentence to ever take that lane if you're on one side of the map, whereas if you're on the other side, then it's a really easy lane to take. I don't like the lack of balance in those lanes. But also on this map, I find there's just too many lines of sight that you can get across lanes, and the cover placement can be a little bit awkward, and that can make navigating the map and properly controlling your surroundings to be very difficult at the very least. And as a result, this is one of those maps where I would kind of want to put it in A because it does have some really good elements to it, but I am going to drop it down to a B tier just due to those issues I mentioned. Next, we have Extraction, and I don't really love this map. I also think it's a nice change of pace at least, because it is a little bit more big and open compared to most of the other maps in the game. So in that sense, it's refreshing, but I also don't really consider it to be a great map. And the spawn trap, especially at the A domination flag, is awful. That's really, really brutal. Usually I'm on the winning side of that, but even then, it's another one of those situations where you're just shooting fish in a barrel, and that gets old pretty quickly. And as a result, I'm going to put it as a C tier map, largely just because it is a nice change of pace. If we had a lot of other like big open maps, this would probably be a D tier for me, but it does get promoted a little bit because of the change of pace. Then after that, we have Firing Range, and I love Firing Range, and it plays great in Black Ops 6 in my opinion. I think it just fits in really nicely. It's the good old Firing Range that we're used to, and I've enjoyed it in every Call of Duty that it's been featured in. Then after that, we have Fugitive, and this is an interesting map because if you would have let me just explore this map in a custom game without ever playing it, I probably would have ranked it reasonably high. I think it's structured very nicely. However, in practice, it doesn't play very well in my experience. And I think this is a spawn issue where the location and direction where it's spawning you in and where it's sort of facing you off spawn. I just find it funnels combat in a very annoying way that doesn't really utilize and take advantage of the full map. It doesn't spread people nicely across the map. And if you want to spread across the map, it's almost like you have to double back out of spawn to get to that other side of the map to play on. And because of that, in my experience at least, and this is, again, primarily coming in from a domination standpoint or even some team deathmatch-based game modes, this is often how it plays. I just don't like how it ends up playing out in practice. And as a result, I put this as a C tier map. It's just not great as far as the actual experience goes, in my eyes. Then after that, we have another remade map here, Grind. I think it plays very well in this game. It's not perfect by any means, but I do like it. I think it's a solid A tier in my eyes. Whereas for Hacienda, another remade map here. In this game, I feel like it plays more like a B tier map. I don't know if it's spawn design or what it is exactly, but it just feels a bit awkward to play. I think it played a bit better in Black Ops 4 than it does in Black Ops 6 for some reason. I can't quite put my finger on it. Then when it comes to Haven, it's a bit of a small map. I wouldn't mind seeing a little more spawn relief, a little more freedom to come off of spawn and make some stuff happen. But overall, not a bad map considering the size. There are at least some opportunities to like flank, for instance, and use an interesting route. So I do think it's a solid B to A tier. I'm leaning more toward B, but close to A. Part of me wants to put it in A tier, but I'm at the end of the day going to put it at a B tier. Then we've got Hideout, and this is by far my favorite original map that Black Ops 6 has to offer. Absolutely S tier in my eyes. This is like probably the only map on this list that's an original map for this game that I'd be happy to see remastered in a future Treyarch game down the road. It's that good in my eyes. Like, this is a fan favorite for me. I really like Hideout in this game. Whereas Lowtown, this is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, especially as a domination player. This plays awful in domination, in my opinion, especially that B domination point. It's just far too many angles that a single player couldn't possibly even cover half of at any given time. And therefore, if you don't have a solid team behind you, you're just not going to win in domination. There's nothing you can really do about that. I mean, unless the other team is totally horrible. But yeah, Lowtown, it doesn't play great in my eyes for domination especially. But even in TDM, I just don't really like how this map tends to flow. I do like the canals. I do like that they're swimming on this map. And I would like to see a little bit more swimming added to more maps in the game. Not every map or anything, but more maps. But overall, unfortunately, I'm just not a fan of Lowtown. After that, we've got Nomad, and I really like Nomad. It is a bit of a smaller map. It was actually initially a face-off map only, but I think they decided to just integrate that into core modes now. And I think Nomad plays quite well. I'm going to put that as a solid A tier map. It's not special enough in my eyes to be S tier, but it is solid, so definitely A tier for me. Next up, I'm sorry Nuketown fanboys, I am so sick of this map. It's a D tier for me. I avoid this map at all costs. If it pops up and it gets voted for, I leave, straight up. And I have no interest in the 24/7 playlist. If it were up to me, I'd rather not see this in regular rotation even. Like, it's fine to have its own playlist. I know it's popular. I know people really like it because it's great for grinding things. And also, I think people have just gotten really accustomed to it over the years. But for me, I burnt out on this map back in Black Ops 2. I've been sick of it ever since then, so it's a D tier for me. After that, we've got Payback, and similar to Babylon, I think it plays quite well for a small map. I don't want to see too many tiny maps like this, but as far as small maps go, it plays fairly well. But thinking about it, I prefer Babylon over Payback, and as a result, I think Payback is more of a B tier for me. It's not too special or anything, but it's okay. I don't mind playing it from time to time. And then we have Protocol, and I'm not a big fan of Protocol. I think it's got some good elements to it, but at the end of the day, I feel like it plays more like a two-lane map. I know there's the underground route that you can take, but that rarely gets any traffic, and it's not really a great route to be taking. And I consider that to be more of a route rather than a lane. And with that in mind, there's really only two other lanes to be playing with, and it's just not that great in my opinion. I generally play very well on Protocol. I've learned how to play it very effectively, but I don't really enjoy my time playing it as much as many of the other maps. But it's not the worst map out there. I wouldn't go as far as calling it a D tier. For me, I'd rather put this in a C tier. Then after that, we have Red Card, and I think I'm just going to go along with the flow here. I don't think I hate this map as much as some people do, but it does have some pretty clear flaws, and more often than not, it doesn't play very well. Sometimes, I feel like it just depends on how your teammates are playing and how the enemies are playing, but sometimes this map can play great. if there's a lot of action going on mid-map and there's a lot of fighting over the B flag, for instance, in domination, I think it can play really well, but that's rarely what ends up happening in my experience. And more often than not, you're just trapping people down in the underground parking area, which is a pretty big flaw with this map, having a spawn area so low with all of the advantages looking down into that area. And it's really hard to break out of that against a competent team. So I'm still going to put this D tier like a lot of people would in this game. But again, I don't think it's quite as bad as many people make it out to be. As for Rewind, it's one of those maps where, like, it's fine. I don't hate it. I don't love it either, though. Like, I'm pretty indifferent to Rewind. It's an okay map that I'm fine playing, but I never really get excited for it. So just a solid B tier in my eyes. Whereas Scud, I actually really like Scud. I'm going to put Scud as an A tier map. It's not quite S tier for me, especially due to how bad the spawns can get on the C domination side of the map. It gets very easy to trap over there. And if you end up on that spawn, you are at a very clear disadvantage. And the best thing you can possibly do is work as hard as possible to flip the spawns rather than actually trying to fight for the B flag, because it's very difficult. But overall, I do like the structure of Scud. I also like that it doesn't play like many of the other maps in this game, so it is a nice change of pace as well. And visually, it's beautiful as well. So I do like the map, and I do consider it to be an A tier here. As for Shutdown, this is one of the newer maps at the time of recording this video, or somewhat new maps at least, and I like it. I think it is structured very well. It plays quite well. I'd also consider that to be a solid A tier map. And now we've got a bit of a controversial one. I know Subsonic is a popular map for a lot of people. In fact, some people early on when the game first launched, they were saying this is their favorite map in the entire game. That's not the case for me. I don't like Subsonic. I've learned how to play it. I can be very successful on Subsonic, but I don't like how the map tends to play, just the way the choke points are structured. And another key thing that I've noticed is, especially if you're playing in the mid-map area, which you should be if you're playing Domination, for instance, there's too many situations where there's always threats like 90 degrees from each other. And that can be really awkward when you're trying to focus on one threat, but you know, perpendicular to that threat, you've got another threat that you also have to worry about. And it just makes it very hard to control your surroundings. And if you don't have a solid team around you, that can really suck. So I don't like Subsonic. I'm going to put it as a C tier map. But I also acknowledge that is going to be unpopular with a lot of people that would rather see that as like an A or S tier map. Now after that, we've got Skyline. And Skyline's a beautiful map. I love the aesthetic of it. And I do think overall it plays quite well. I do like the map. However, I have mentioned this early on in the game's life cycle when I was talking about some flaws with the map design in this game. I think Skyline is still lacking in some areas. There's just something about it where I would like to see a bit more freedom in navigation on this map, because similar to Protocol, it can feel like a two-lane map. And I know you've got the underground route that you can take, but again, that's kind of like the underground route on Protocol, although it's even more limiting. So it's a route, not a lane. And then the upper area as well, it just kind of blends in with the other lanes. And there's lots of cross lanes that go all the way across the map, like left to right across the map. And therefore, even though I do consider it to be one of the better maps in the game, I can't in good conscience put it as an S tier. And I think I'm going to have to drop it down to an A tier just because I feel like it could be better than it is. Now, after that one, we've got Vault, and Vault's another one of those maps where it's just a solid B tier map. It's not special, it's not something I get excited to play, but I don't think it's a bad map. I don't think it's awful. I don't mind playing it. If it pops up in rotation every now and then, I'm totally happy playing it. And then finally, we've got Vorkuta, and I think this falls into a similar tier as Vault, where I like it for a nice change of pace. If I haven't played it in a little while, I'm happy to play it. But I don't think it's really all that special. It's definitely not a map I'd like to see like remastered in a future Call of Duty or anything. It's just okay. It's fine. And I feel like that describes a lot of the maps in this game. And we can see that clearly with my list here. There's a lot of B tier maps that are not bad, but they're not great. They're not going to be all that memorable. I'm not going to be looking back years from now and being like, wow, I really remember this map. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, I think that really describes many of the maps in this game. But there we go. That is my map tier list for Black Ops 6. And this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about my list? Remembering that this is my list and it's totally fine if you disagree with anything. And if you do, if there's any on this list that you think are just completely in the wrong place, you would put it on like the opposite end of the spectrum for you, please let me know down below. Oh, and also I will leave a link to this tier maker down below if you want to do this for yourself. And if you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.